Imagine pitching a network on this. We're going to film people during the single most medically fragile moment of their lives, point a camera at their seizures, and call it healing. Now imagine that show actually got made, ran for 6 seasons, and is still discussed today like it was some kind of public service. Welcome to Celebrity Rehab with Dr. Drew, the program that promised to destigmatize addiction and instead turn detox into a spectator sport with worse survival odds than most competition shows that don't even involve drugs. In January 2008, VH1 rolled out the premise like it belonged on a public health pamphlet. A real board-certified addiction specialist,
patients who are now really flying in the face of all that hard work by singing 99 bottles of beer on the wall.
Dr. Drew Pinsky would take in a rotating cast of fading celebrities, put them through a 21-day inpatient program, and show America that addiction is a disease, not a punchline. Noble, admirable, the kind of mission statement you'd print on a tote bag. Here's the part that never made it onto the tote bag.
It's early in treatment, so putting them into exciting or evocative environments can be problematic.
Those same patients were also being paid on a weekly basis, specifically structured as an incentive to keep them in front of the cameras. Free treatment worth $60,000 plus a paycheck for staying visibly sick on national television. So before a single dose of anything was administered, the show had already answered its own ethical question, and the answer was profit first, sobriety second.
Relaxing and doing things that we love to do. We're all performers, so being out here was great.
Please don't say that part out loud. By the time the credits rolled on season 1, 12 future obituaries were already quietly writing themselves. To understand how this happened, you have to understand who Dr. Drew Pinsky already was before any of this. He wasn't some C-list grifter looking for a camera.
Just to, we have some recreation to show that we can do meetings, continue this process. And
are we going? We're going for the whole day, huh?
Going for the day.
He was a real physician, board certified in addiction medicine, who'd spent over a decade as the voice of Loveline, the radio show where teenagers called in with sex and drug questions and got answers from an actual doctor instead of a DJ, making things up.
Would it be easier if I was someone else? Sometimes I feel just like the devil's guinea pig.
That credibility mattered. It's the reason this show didn't get laughed off the air in its first week. According to Pinsky's own account, the idea was born out of genuine irritation. He was tired of watching tabloids treat celebrity addiction like a quirky character flaw, something Lindsay Lohan did between premieres, rather than the chronic, often fatal illness he treated every day. So he pitched VH1 a different angle. Real treatment, real doctors, filmed honestly, no sugarcoating the withdrawal, no pretending detox looks like a spa weekend. And for a while, it worked exactly as advertised. Season 1 brought in names like Jeff Conaway from Taxi and Joni China Laurer from WWE.
Rico jumped off.
Who jumped in? Rico did. Why?
People the audience already had a parasocial relationship with, now stripped of the glamour and shown shaking through opiate withdrawal in a converted house in Pasadena. It was uncomfortable in a way reality TV almost never bothered to be. Critics weren't sure what to do with it. Variety called it riveting as a car wreck, which in retrospect was less a metaphor than a forecast.
Very well. So I wanted to challenge them with a day trip to give them the experience of moving out into the real world.
VH1 had spent years building an audience on dating show train wrecks and gossip-fueled surreality programming. Celebrity Rehab gave that same audience something that looked almost respectable. Almost. Because buried in season 2, before anyone had even finished praising the show's bravery, the first real crack was already forming, and it had a name, Gary Busey. The first sign that this show didn't fully understand its own ethics arrived in the form of Gary Busey, which, if you know anything about Gary Busey, should already be setting off alarms.
I'm gonna jump.
The situation here is almost unmanageable.
Season 2 brought him in not as a patient, but as a mentor, 13 years sober, there to inspire the others. That was the official contract. That was VH1's press release. And yet Dr. Drew, by his own admission, spent the better part of 10 days treating Busey like he was the one who needed saving, openly confused about whether the man assigned to motivate addicts was actually one himself. So within a single season, the show had already lost track of who was the patient and who was the doctor. And somehow, that wasn't even the part that ended up killing anyone. That distinction belongs to Mike Starr. The former Alice in Chains bassist arrived already deep in a fight with heroin, meth, and prescription opioids. And according to addiction specialists who reviewed the footage afterward, he likely should never have been detoxed the way he was on camera, let alone that fast. He died on March 8, 2011, found by police in his Salt Lake City home, 44 yeyears old. 2 months later, Jeff Conaway followed him.
Last time I was there, I wouldn't even come off the boat.
Why, you were too busy?
I asked every
Complications from years of pill abuse that the autopsy connected directly back to the same disease the show claimed to be treating. 2 deaths, 2 months apart, and suddenly entertainment journalists who'd spent 3 seasons writing redemption story headlines were now writing the words death trap instead, and not as a metaphor. Alice in Chains didn't wait for an obituary to weigh in. Guitarist Jerry Cantrell and drummer Sean Kinney went public, calling the show disgusting, with Kinney pointing out that you cannot manufacture entertainment out of someone's lowest, most medically vulnerable moment and pretend that's the same thing as helping them. Read that again. The actual bandmates of a man who died after appearing on this show were more concerned about exploitation than the network airing it. That's not a red flag. That's the whole flag, on fire, draped over the building. But VH1 kept the cameras rolling, because apparently 2 deaths in one spring wasn't the universal signal to stop. Rodney King checked in, became must-watch television purely by being Rodney King, and then drowned in his own swimming pool in June 2012 with cocaine, alcohol, and marijuana in his system. Pinsky's public response to the mounting criticism was somehow to get defensive about it on the record, essentially asking why he should take the blame when a man has a heart attack. 2 months later, Joey Kovar, 29 years old, was also dead. That's 4 cast members gone in roughly 18 months, which is not a coincidence. That's a pattern. And patterns on reality television usually get renewed, not investigated. So naturally, by September 2012, the show rebranded.
Start with me! No!
Out went the celebrities, in came ordinary people, and the title quietly shrank from Celebrity Rehab to just Rehab with Dr. Drew, as though removing the word celebrity would also remove the body count. It didn't fix the body count, it just removed the famous names from the headlines, which, coincidentally, is also exactly what a network does when it wants a scandal to age out of the news cycle. And if you think the lowest point had already happened,
I feel that things are unraveling.
What do you mean?
we haven't even gotten to Mindy McCready's seizure. During Detox in season 3, the cameras caught her shaking and convulsing on the floor, while her roommate, Mackenzie Phillips, initially assumed she was faking it and laughed. Nearly a full minute passed, on camera, with no medical intervention, while production kept rolling. Not edited out, not reshot, aired. That single uncut minute is arguably the most honest thing the show ever produced because it accidentally proved every critic right at once. The cameras were never secondary to the treatment. They were equal partners in it, and sometimes they won. McCready died by suicide in February 2013, after years of addiction and a documented prior attempt, and that's the moment the internet stopped debating and just detonated. Modern Family executive producer Danny Zuker posted a viral rant pointing out that you cannot tell a sick, vulnerable person they're safe under the banner of recovery and then broadcast their unraveling for ratings, comparing the math to a game show that had actually started killing its contestants. Musician Richard Marx went further, publicly comparing Pinsky to a doctor best known for assisting suicide.
Herewith is paramount to success. It just doesn't happen any other way. I want you to meditate on that thought.
He deleted the tweet. He did not delete the opinion. 3 months later, Pinsky announced there would be no more celebrity seasons, and his stated reason wasn't grief, accountability, or reflection. It was exhaustion. He told a radio interviewer he was simply tired of taking the heat, not tired of the deaths, tired of being asked about them. By the time the dust settled, 12 former patients were dead. 12, which raises an uncomfortable question the show never had a good answer for. At what point does we're helping people stop being a mission statement and start being a body count with a production budget? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Nobody at VH1 wanted printed on a press release. This wasn't a show that went wrong. This was a show that was wrong from the moment someone wrote incentivized weekly salary into a patient's treatment contract.
How the heck I'm gonna survive?
Got it.
Because right there, I'm going out and I'm drinking and I'm going the home.
Bad outcomes weren't a bug in the system. They were the business model, working exactly as designed. Think about the structural conflict at the center of this thing. Dr. Drew Pinsky was simultaneously the treating physician and an executive producer with a direct financial stake in keeping patients on screen. Columbia University's Dr. John Mariani put it bluntly at the time, when the doctor benefits from a patient's continued participation, that has to affect how the doctor relates to that patient. That's not a hypothetical conflict of interest. That's a measurable one, with a paycheck attached, and it sat at the foundation of literally every season. And it gets worse once you compare the show against actual clinical standards. Addiction specialists who reviewed the program pointed out that the confrontational
Anybody.
Whatever you want to call it, what is it, a threat?
It's not threatening anybody either.
made-for-television style Pinsky used might be great drama, but it actively works against patients who are less severely addicted, the exact people who most need to feel safe asking for help rather than performing their breakdown for an audience. So the show wasn't just failing the patients on camera, it was sending a message to every viewer quietly struggling at home that this is what treatment looks like. And that message was wrong on purpose because the honest version doesn't get ratings. Then there's the confidentiality problem, which somehow everyone involved treated as a footnote instead of the headline. This is a population defined by relapse, by privacy, by the basic clinical principle that recovery requires a safe, contained environment. Celebrity Rehab's entire premise was the opposite of containment. It broadcast people's most fragile psychiatric moments to a national audience, then asked the public to believe that exposure and healing could coexist in the same 21-day window. They cannot. Ask anyone who's actually run a treatment program, not a production schedule. So when critics later started calling this one of the most ethically indefensible formats reality television ever produced, that wasn't hindsight being harsh. That was hindsight finally catching up to math that was always there. 12 deaths weren't 12 unrelated tragedies that happened to share a casting agent.
And you got to stop playing into that thing that you do. It's going to kill you.
They were the predictable output of a system that paid people to stay sick on camera and called it medicine. And the truly damning part is that Pinsky never had to answer for the financial incentive structure itself. He answered for the deaths individually, one grieving radio interview at a time, while the actual mechanism that made those deaths more likely just quietly cycled into the next contract, the next season, the next batch of cast members who needed the money badly enough to say yes. Which brings us to the part where somehow this show still gets called influential. Give the show this much. For about one season, it almost did what it claimed it would do. Jeff Conaway's withdrawal was hard to watch precisely because it was honest. And for a brief moment in early 2008, it genuinely looked like television had found a way to talk about addiction without turning it into a punchline. That's not nothing. That's also not what this became.
All this, you can't see it? You know it so well.
No, I don't.
Because the second VH1 realized vulnerability got ratings, the mission statement quietly flipped. Treatment stopped being the point and started being the backdrop, a medical-sounding excuse to keep cameras rolling on people who were, by definition, in no condition to consent to being content. Time can call it influential. History will call it what Sean Kinney called it back in 2009, disgusting, just with better lighting. 12 deaths later, the show didn't get canceled out of conscience. It got canceled because Dr. Drew got tired of being asked about it. That's the actual ending. Not redemption, not reckoning, fatigue. So no, this wasn't rehab. This was a 21-day pilot season for a tragedy with a built-in incentive plan, and somehow it took 12 obituaries before anyone in charge admitted that out loud. Like, subscribe, and let us know which other groundbreaking reality show was secretly just a slow-motion crime scene with a laugh track. We've got a list.